Welcome to this third installment as we overview the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon being its author. The last episode we filmed, and hopefully you've had a chance to view, we spoke to some of the words that were very significant in this book, or a phrase such as vanity of vanities or under the sun. And we talked about profit, that which many of us want to have as a result of the labors of our life. But the word labor in this book is often used in the sense of toiling into the point of exhaustion and then seeing little or nothing that comes of lasting value from that which we have worked so hard to accumulate. I love this book because it is a book of philosophy, as we mentioned in our first episode. It's a book about Solomon's seeking knowledge. And we talked a little bit about how in our culture, in the Western educational system, we discern truth on the basis of what we perceive through our senses, empiricism, or what we reasonably figure out, that which is rationalism. But that there is a third purveyor of truth, and that is God himself, who chooses to reveal himself, not just in creation and not just in the miraculous, but finally, Hebrews chapter 1 tells us, in the person of his Son. It is a book about life. It's interesting, as I was preparing for this episode, I pulled out from some of my previous notes on Ecclesiastes what three very famous men once said about the definition of life. Robert Frost, the great American poet, once said that life, he's learned one valuable thing about life, and he said this: it goes on. George Bernard Shaw, the British playwright, said, life is a series of inspired folly. Typical cynical view of the playwright. And then one of the most famous, if not the most famous preacher in the last couple of centuries that has come to us from the shores of England, Charles Spurgeon, once wrote that life is an onion, and you peel it off one layer at a time, and sometimes you cry. Ecclesiastes is a book where the 12th chapter ends with optimism, where much of the previous 11 speak to pessimism. That futility in the 12th chapter is replaced with fulfillment. And the idleness that so grips some of these paragraphs of the book gives way to a place of personal responsibility. This is a book that is replete with difficult questions. Allow me today to just give you a few. There are at least three problem passages in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we'll get to those. The first one is this: is there no life after death? If you were to read Ecclesiastes and not read it carefully and not know much of the other wisdom literature, or certainly the greater revelation that we have in the New Testament, there are those who see this book as suggesting, I think, not well, that there is no life after death. There's another problem passage. Should we just eat, drink, and be merry, if you will, pursue a life of hedonism because there's no judgment to follow? And then finally, is all that we do, all of our labor, all of our hard work, all the efforts that we put forth, is it all in vain? Well, let me leave you with this. In 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 58, Paul says, be steadfast, be immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that what you do for the work of the kingdom will always have a benefit and a blessing attached to it. It will not be in vain. The certainty of death is one of the applications in this book, to be sure. It speaks to the non-believer, it speaks to the marginal carnal believer, and it speaks to those of us who are mature in our faith. But the life lived, if you will, above the sun is also spoken of in this book. A life of self-sacrifice, a life of a proper individual perspective, somewhat of what we saw a few weeks ago in the 73rd Psalm. And it also speaks about you and I investing our life and the labors of our life in the promotion and the advancement of God's kingdom. I'm really looking forward to spending the next several times together with you as we continue on, beginning in our next session with a look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1. God bless you.